Good morning. Today is Thursday, Yud Beis Tevis. Today we are learning the fourth Perek of Eiruvin. We started yesterday, as mentioned yesterday, Perakim Gimel, Dal, and Hey all talk about the Tchum on Shabbos. So we're continuing with that conversation. Today's shiur is dedicated Lila Nishmas Our Nachman Simcha Cohen Yeshua Mordechai Ben Shepsel Bracha Sarbas Moled and Yom Moshe Ben Yosef Ben Neshamos will have an aliyah. And for Shleimach for Ad Sarbas Leach Hana Pesel Bas Yenta Yisrael Ben Rachalea Rachel Bas Pesel Zelda Avram Yitzchak Ben Risha and Chaya Bas Doba Bela Bas Fus Yisrael. Okay, so we're continuing with this topic. We're in Perek Daled Mishnah Aleph. So what happens if someone is outside the Tchum of Shabbos? He left his, he left his, he left the Tchum on Shabbos. Misha Otziyu of the Kochavim, one who was forcibly taken out of the Tchum on Shabbos by idolaters, or Ruach Ra, or who wandered out of his tchum after being possessed by an evil spirit that made him temporarily lose his senses. He went insane. Ein lo el arba'os has only 4 amos at his new location in which he is allowed to move. Hechziruhu ki'ilu lo yatsa. If the idolaters or the evil spirits returned him to any point within his tchum, is as if he had never left. And he may once again move throughout the 2,000 amos he acquired at being a shah. Let's say, for example, the guy's kidnapped. And again, the guy's walking to shul, Khalila, and he's thrown in the back of the truck. And they do whatever they do to him. And they take him outside the tchum, and then they drop him off back at home. So, as far as Chil Shabbos is concerned, he didn't do anything wrong. He's gonna have trauma the rest of his life with the experience that happened to him with the kidnapping or whatever they did to him. But as far as his Chil Shabbos, he did nothing wrong. Okay, holy chul should never happen to anyone else, and we should never know from such sorrows like that. But we're talking in a theoretical sense over here. Holy chul the iracheres if they took him out of his tchum to another city which is surrounded by walls and Nasnu, Bedir, or Besohar, or they put him into a pen or a corral outside of his tchum. I mean, these enclosures are larger than 4 amos and they're used to hold animals typically. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lazar, Ben Azariah, Omrim, Rabbi Gamliel, Elazar Ben Azariah said, Mahalich es kula. He may move about the entire area in which he was placed because an enclosed area is treated like 4 amos. If it's fenced in, it's like Rishus Hayochid. Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Kiva say, Elo Ela Arba Amos, he only has 4 amos which he's allowed to move. Even an enclosure is treated as 4 amos only for a person who began Shabbos there. Therefore, if he's placed there randomly on Shabbos, then he does not have that leniency according to Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. So, story time. Ma'aser Shabo Farn Disin. It once happened that these 4 Tanaim came by ship from the city of Prendisin. So the ship arrived in port before Shabbos, but before they had a chance to disembark, Shabbos began. We had Fliga Svina Beyond, and their ship was then driven out to sea to a point beyond the tchum of the city. Although they were now beyond the tchum, Gamliel and Elazar ben Azariah walked through the entire ship in line with their view that one who is in a closed area may walk throughout the enclosure. Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, Lo Zazni Arba'amos. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva did not move from the 4 amos which they were standing when the ship left the tchum. That sounds really machmir. If they wanted to restrict with themselves in line with the view that even in an enclosed area, one never has more than 4 amos outside of his tchum. So they're standing on a boat, they stood in that place for the whole Shabbos. That's pretty extreme, I would say. Not that they need my endorsement. Mishnah Beis, Pam Achas, Lo Nichnasu the Gamal, the Namal Ashach. Once, on another occasion, the ship on which these four Tanaim were traveling did not enter the port on Friday until it became dark and Shabbos had begun. Concerning that the port city was beyond their tchum that was established at sea when Shabbos began, Amalol Ram Gamliel, the Chacham who wished to spend Shabbos in the port city said to Rabban Gamliel, Ma anu levi. May we disembark and enter the city or not? Amalahan mutaratem. He said to them, you are permitted to disembark and enter the city. Shikvar ayisi mestakel ayine besoch hatachum ad shalo pashecha. For I was already gazing at the port before Shabbos began, and I observed that we were within the tchum of the city before it became dark. Since we were within the tchum of the city when Shabbos began, and the city is considered our Shabbos residence, we may walk throughout the city and 2,000 miles beyond it in every direction. That was according to Rabban Gamliel. He was the Nasi Ador. Okay, so we we got so the first mission that we just learned, we we just learned that someone who leaves his chum must remain in place for the entire day. So with the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, which we're going to see in maybe about a month or so, they list several exceptions to this rule, meaning someone who goes outside the tchum to testify about Rosh Chodesh, about the new moon, and obviously a midwife who goes to deliver a baby, or people going to rescue others from a fire. Yourself the fascists, an attacking army, a flood, or a collapsed building. They're all given a new 2,000 amos techum at the new location. These are all extenuating circumstances, obviously. So this Mishnah Gimel, deals with the person who left his tchum on such a mission, and before he reached his destination, he discovered that his services were no longer needed. Let's say, for example, that the guy's on a cellar call, and then Rudy already left. He left the destination. He left his he already left his original his point of origin. He's en route to the destination, and then gets a call that it's called off. What happens then? So let's see, Mishnah Gimel. Me shiyatza b'rashus. If one left his home with legal permission in order to testify about the new moon for Rosh Chodesh or to save a life, so luckily he's allowed to leave his tchum. And before he reached his destination, he was told that the deed that you set out to do has already been done, and there is no need for you to continue traveling. So what happens then? Yesh lo apayim amalech haruach. He has a new tchum of 2,000 amos in every direction, measured from the place where he was notified that his services were not rendered, required. Furthermore, if his new tchum entered into the original tchum, if his new tchum entered into the original tchum that he had when Shabbos began, it's as if he never left his original tchum and he may return to his house. The Chanim granted this leniency just as they granted a leniency for all those who go out on Shabbos and say other Jews from attack, that they may return to their places with their weapons and act only usher under the malacha of Hotzah. I'm not opposed to it by any way, shape, or form, but I think that the psak that the other guys are given is that they can go back home after each call, so that there shouldn't be an issue. Because because you're going to get stuck where you are after Shabbos is over. Then you're going to have an issue. People don't want to do this in future weeks. I have friends who are on Hatzala, and they said that sometimes they get stuck in Shabbos meals with guests that are not the most enjoyable, and they get saved by the bell by getting a Hatzala call. They got to run out and get out of the uncomfortable meal that they're in with their um, less than pleasant guests. Okay, let's continue Mishnah Dalet. Me, Shiyasha B'derech, one who was traveling close to Shabbos and sat down on the road to rest without realizing he was within the tchum of the city to which he was traveling. Fa'alma v'ra v'harei hu samach le'ir. And after Shabbos began, he stood up and saw that this was near the city, that within its tchum. Clearly, had he realized this earlier, he would have designated the city as a Shabbos residence. However, below Haisa Kavanasu Lakach Olikanis. Nevertheless, since this had not been his intention before Shabbos began, he may not enter the city and be considered as one of its residents. Rather, his 2,000 amat tchum is measured from his resting area. He may walk only until the end of his tchum, even if it ends in the middle of the city. Rabbi Meir, this is according to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yechanis. Rabbi Yehuda says since he was within the tchum of the city before Shabbos began, he's considered a resident of the city. Therefore, he may enter the city and walk throughout it in 2,000 amos beyond it in every direction. Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda stated as proof beyond, for his view, Ma'aseh. So story time. Once upon a time, that the Rabbi Tarfon entered the city on Shabbos, making full use of its tchum, although before Shabbos began, it had not been his intention to reside there. Therefore, accordingly, it wouldn't be an issue to do that. Mishnah Hey, Mishi Yashna B'derech Lo Yada Shecha. A woman who was asleep on the road before Shabbos began was not aware that it had become dark and that Shabbos had begun. Yesh Lo Apayim Amalach Ruach has a tchum of 2,000 amos in every direction from his location at the beginning of Shabbos, even though he did not have in mind before Shabbos began to establish that location as his Shabbos residence. These are the words of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. According to him, a person automatically acquires his location as his Shabbos residence. The Chachamim say, since he was sleeping when Shabbos began and did not have express intent to spend Shabbos at this location, it does not become a Shabbos residence. Therefore, he only has 4 amos in each direction in which he's allowed to move. Rabbi Lezer says he is not granted 4 amos in each direction. Rather, the 4 amos is granted. He is granted are measured Ben son with him in the middle, allowing him 2 amos in each direction. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Le'ezeruch Shius Yilech. Rabbi Yehuda says he may walk 4 amos in any direction that he chooses. But Rabbi Yehuda Shem Beirel Lo She'eno Yachol Lachzer. But Rabbi Yehuda agrees that once he chooses for himself a set of 4 amos in one direction, either verbally or by walking in a specific direction, he may not retract and choose 4 amos in another direction. So it seems that Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Lezer that he never has more than a total of 4 by 4 amos to move on that Shabbos. That sounds. I don't want to be in that position. Okay, I don't know. I can't. I wouldn't be able to do that. For sure not. Especially now this ADHD generation who's going to be able to sit at 4 amos for the whole Shabbos and not go anywhere. Mishnah Vav. There were 2 people who were each confined to their own 4 amma area. Mixas amos of Shazeh, Besoch amos of Shazeh. And some of the 4 amos of one overlaps some of the 4 amos of the other. Mevian ba'ochlim ba'emsa. They may bring their food and eat it in the middle amos, which are shared by both. As long as each one is careful not to transfer his food from his 4 amma area into the unshared part of his friend's 4 amma area. So you have to keep your food and yourself within the 4 amas that you have for that Shabbos. Hayushlosh. Well, if there were three people who were each confined to their own 4 area, Vamsai Muvlavin, and the middle person's area was overlapped by the other two, but the areas of the other two outer people did not overlap. Who mutter imahen vehain mutarin imo. He, the middle person, is permitted to bring his food and eat with either of them in the area he shares with them, and they, the other two people, are permitted to bring their food and eat with them in the area that they share with him. But the two outer people are forbidden to bring food and eat with each other since they do not share any space. Rabbi Shimon said, the Mahadavradome, to what is this tchum? So what is this law of the tchum that the outer people may share with the middle person but not with each other similar? The shalosh chatzeros hapasuchos zulazu upasuchos l'shus harabim. The three courtyards are open into double one to the other and are also open into the l'shus harabim. Average dehem im ha'im sayos. If the two outer courtyards were each joined in eruv with the middle courtyard, but not with each other, he muteris imahem v'hei muteris ima. It is permitted with them, and if the residents of the middle courtyard may carry into either of the outer courtyards, and they are permitted with it. And the residents of either outer courtyard may carry into the middle courtyard. But the two outer courtyards are prohibited with one another. The residents of, meaning that the residents of one outer courtyard may not carry into the other outer courtyard. Okay, Mishnah Zion. If one was traveling on Friday and it began to grow dark too quickly, going to reach home before Shabbos, Ilan or Gader, but he knew a landmark such as a tree or a wall that lay ahead of him within 2,000 amas of his present location and within 2,000 amas of his house. Amar Shivisasi Tachta. And he said, my residence for Shabbos should be under that tree or wall. Lo Amar Klum, he has said nothing. Meaning that his declaration has no effect since the area under the tree or next to the wall is larger than the 4 amas the person perceives as his residence when he camps out in the open. The declaration is not specific enough to establish a residence in that place. Should be southside Beikaro, or if you said my residence should be at the tree's trunk, thus specifying an exact area, his declaration takes effect and establishes residence at the tree's trunk. Accordingly, he may go from the place he is standing until his trunk up to 2,000 amos, and then from his trunk until his house up to 2,000 amos. It comes out that he may go after dark up to 4,000 amos. The Chachamim were makil and allowed a traveler to establish a Shabbos residence by simply specifying a location and declaring it to be his residence. Mishnah Ches. If the traveler does not know of any landmark ahead of him to establish as his residence, or if he is not knowledgeable of the law that allows him to designate a residence from afar, and he therefore said, my residence for Shabbos should be in my current place. His residence is established where he is, and his place thus acquires for him 2,000 amos in every direction. Agulos, the tchum forms a circular area with a diameter of 4,000 amas with the person's residence at the center. Deri Chanina ben Antignos. This is according to the words of Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos. The Chachamim say, "Merubas ketavla merubas." The tchum is formed as a square, like a square board that measures 4,000 amos on each side. Today, shehei niskar is a vidas, so that he may gain the right to go farther than 2,000 amos toward the corners of the square. The circle that forms the 2,000 amma area around the person's residence is squared off, which allows him to go farther than 2,000 amas in the direction of the corners. Look at the picture over here. You can see that you have the square is 4,000 amas, and from left to right is from the center to each side is 2,000 amas, and from left to right and top to bottom is a distance of 4,000 amas, and then across the plane. And to me, it kind of looks like a pizza pie. It's no wonder why people eat pizza once you Shabbos. You have like the chazara on the tchum. Maybe, who knows? That's just my 2 cents. Okay, Mishnah Tess. Vizuhi shamu ha'ani me'are beraglav. This law that a traveler can establish residence by his presence is included in what the Chachamim say that a poor person can make an eruv techumah with his feet by going to a place and being there when Shabbos begins. Since the traveler often does not carry with him food with which to make an eruv, he is permitted as an ani who has no food to establish his residence in a place simply by being there. Rabbi Meir said, "Anu ein lanu ela ani." We have this law only for a poor person. A person who has food available to him can establish his residence for Shabbos only by placing food in that place as an eruv, since that is the primary way of making an eruv. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Echad ani v'echad ashir." Both a poor person and a rich person may establish residence in a place simply by being there. This is, in fact, the main way of making an eruv. Lo amru rav b'pas el lahakil al ha'ashish lo yetzi v'ari b'ragav. The Chachamim did not say to make an eruv with bread, with food, except to make it easier for a rich person so that he should not have to go out and make an eruv with his feet, so he should he can instead send a shaliach before Shabbos to put food there for him, as that came as a kula for the rich man. Okay, 2 more to go. We're on Mishnah Yud. Mish yatsa lelech be'ir shemaravim ba. The one set out from his house on Friday to place an eruv at a particular place for himself and the other people of his city, so that they should be able to travel on Shabbos to nearby cities for which they make an eruv. But before he reached the spot where he intended to place the eruv, his friend convinced him to turn back. But, he is still permitted to go on Shabbos to the other city. Since he started out from his house on Friday, he's considered a traveler who may establish a particular spot at another location as a Shabbos residence. Since he intended on placing an eruv in a particular spot, it still plans to go to the next town on Shabbos. It's as if he explicitly established the spot as a Shabbos residence, and his tchum is measured from there. However, all the other people of his city are forbidden to travel to the other city, since they remain at home and they are not eligible to designate a spot at another location as a Shabbos residence without placing an eruv there. And since the actual eruv was never set up, they may not walk beyond the tchum of their own city. Different Yehuda, this is according to Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, "Kol sheyachol ha'arev lo eruv harei chamar gama." Anyone who returned to his house and is able to make an eruv with food, but instead designated a particular spot on the road as a Shabbos resident and failed to set up an eruv is like a person driving a donkey and a camel who cannot walk in front of the donkey or behind the camel, but only between the two animals. In our case, the owner may walk only between the intended eruv location and his city. He may not go beyond the intended eruv location because that spot might not be a Shabbos residence. He may not go beyond his house the opposite direction because the intended eruv location might have become his Shabbos residence. Therefore, he's confined to the area between the two. And finally, Mishnah Yud Aleph, going back to what we learned in the first Mishnah, that someone to travel beyond his tchum on Shabbos is confined to his immediate 4 amas. We continue with that topic. Mish yatsa chutz tchum afilu ama achas lo yikanes. One who went out of the tchum, even if he went out only 1 amma past the boundary, may not re-enter the part of the tchum that is beyond his immediate 4 amas. Although the 4 amas to which he is now entitled enables him to return to his original tchum, he does not regain its use. So Eliezer says, as long as he still has access to his original tchum, we consider it as if he had never traveled beyond it. Shtayim mikanes. Therefore, if he is within 2 amas of the tchum, he may re-enter it. Shalosh lo yikanes. But if he went 3 amas out of the tchum, he may not re-enter since he no longer has access to it. Finally, Mishahechshich chutz l'tchum afilu ama achas, a traveler who was overtaken by darkness, means Shabbos already started when he was still outside the tchum of the city to which he was headed. Even if he was only 1 amma outside it, he does not acquire the tchum of the city. Rather, the tchum is measured by his location at the beginning of Shabbos. Therefore, he may not enter the city, which is more than 2,000 amas from his location. Rabbi Shimon says, even if he was 15 amas away from the marker that defines the boundary of the city's tchum when Shabbos began, he may enter the city. She'ein hamashuchos mematzin es hamidos b'vnei hatoven. Because the surveyors who measure the city tchum are not precise with regards to the tchum measurements and place the tchum marker 15 amas closer to the city than the actual tchum boundary on account of those who err. Therefore, a traveler who finds himself 15 amas short of the tchum marker is actually within the tchum of the city. Since he is within the tchum of the city, he acquires the city's tchum and enter the city. Okay. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue tomorrow, Mr. Hashem, with Perek Hey. Have a wonderful day.